Good morning. We're going to talk about intuition today. It's something we all have. It's that little voice in the back of your mind or that gut feeling that seems to be guiding us toward or away from something. Now, where does this come from? Is it a divine intervention? Is it a sign from the universe? Is it something we need to follow? What happens when we don't follow it? Well, my name's Frank Zaccari, and this is Life Altering Events. My guest today is my friend, Randi Thomas, and who believes in the power and the energy of intuition. Now, I'm not going to go any further with an introduction because her story is just amazing. I want to get right to her. Randi, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much. What a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you today and share with the viewers.
Well, we're excited because this story, ladies and gentlemen, is just, I was just in amazement listening to it. So Randi, give the viewers kind of an overview of your background, where you grew up, some of the traditions you had to deal with, particularly coming from the area you came from. And let's get right to your story. Go ahead.
Thank you, Frank. Well, like you, I'm from the similar area. You grew up in Buffalo. I grew up in Cleveland, and I'm still here in Cleveland. I love Cleveland, Ohio. I love the different ethnic pockets we have here and the diversity that we enjoy. And I am what's kind of rare now as 100% of Polish descent. And I grew up in a little Polish neighborhood in the city of Cleveland, East 71st and Lansing, and it was just such a beautiful upbringing, very family oriented. I have two older brothers. We're all 3 years apart, very close. My parents, they got divorced after about 30 some years of marriage. They met in high school and were each other's first date, and raised us in such a fun Polish traditional way, which means lots of cousins around, lots of aunts and uncles. My grandparents lived below us in a duplex. We had cousins over all the time that are still close to this day. My cousins are like my brothers and sisters. And so, but it was a more of a working class background. My parents, my grandparents on my father's side, so my maternal grandparents, Stella and Stanley, came from Poland. And Stella came on the boat from, I think she was about 16 as an orphan, and had a saloon where she served food and housed immigrants, and she called it the Mayflower Inn.
Wow.
Downtown Cleveland.
What a great name.
Exactly. Well, Stanley was older, and Stanley died of a heart attack in his 50s, so Stella had to keep on going. And my dad is one of two. He has an older brother, Leonard, and my dad's Edward. So Eddie, what does Eddie do is play the accordion and play polkas all his life. And so we had music around, right? You kind of know the traditions, right?
Yes.
And but it wasn't necessarily, we weren't coddled. We were taught tough lessons, right? We were taught to be tough, and we were taught to be very faithful. I was raised in the Catholic faith, and I'm no longer Catholic, but that upbringing was taught me traditions, taught me devotions, and taught me that was something higher than ourselves, and this divinity, this power that is really resident within us, as I have come to learn, that it is not just the divine outside, but it's the divine within. Interestingly, my father in the 1970s had books lying around the house of Dr. Wayne Dyer, and so kind of married the power of positive thinking with the spiritual traditions and the Catholic faith. And then my mother had her own brush with stage 3B cancer in the 1980s. She had 6 months to live. This was in the 1980s. And we just celebrated her 90th birthday in March.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful story.
Yep. She wasn't ready to go, and she was determined to live. And she's a miracle, and I certainly followed in her footsteps.
Okay, that's amazing. The ethnic backgrounds, I came from an Italian background, but it's the same story. the same thing, the same ideas, the same training. Now, Randy, when you in the world we grew up in, you were supposed to stay there and live there your entire life, right? In that same neighborhood, but you broke tradition, so you went away to college.
Yes.
How did that change you? What was the big thing that occurred there?
Well, thanks for asking about that, Frank. Yes. So my both older brothers went into the trades, the tool and die trades, and my eldest brother eventually became an engineer. And I wanted to go away to college. And I was the first in my family to go to college and the first of my cousins to actually go away. So I only went 2.5 hours away, but for our Polish family, that might as well have been around the world, halfway around the world. And so, but I wanted to venture out, not that I was bucking the traditions, but there was something more, and that's been the call all of my life, that there is something more out there than staying with the familiar. And I think there's a hazard for us humans that we want to stay with the familiar. We are social beings. It's great to have a tribe, right? A social complex and construct that you're familiar with. But for me, I felt that it was going to stunt my growth. And not that I was shunning it. And some, one uncle in particular thought that I was, why go away? And you're, shunning what you were raised with. And certainly that wasn't the case. I know that that's how it was perceived at times. But that, as you know, and you live in California, that upbringing never leaves you. And certainly I'm back in Cleveland now after having lived a few different places. But it started my, I have an independent streak, and that independent streak has saved my life.
That's outstanding. So you're in school and you became enamored with the law when we spoke. Tell us about that. What drove you there? Well,
I think that I have, and if you ask my father, who's also 90, turning 90 in June, I had a natural ability to think like a lawyer and perhaps negotiate like a lawyer. He said I could never be disciplined because everything was a negotiation.
Exactly.
And it's life is a negotiation, actually. And so I had a natural propensity towards it. My father was active in local politics and cultivated for me and modeled for me a love of civic involvement and an interest in laws and the social contract theories that we have between the governed and the government. And so growing up in the 1970s and the Cold War and in 1972, so I was born in 1961. I have a big birthday coming up in November.
You do?
Yes, I'm going to be 60 and loving every minute of it. So grew up in 1972 with understanding Nixon and going to China and the Cold War and what the USSR was. And so that always fascinated me. So of course I went to college. Political science was a natural major for me, and psychology because I love the power of the mind. And so what does one do with a bachelor's degree in political science? Why get a master's degree in political science?
Exactly.
And so I did. And I've always wanted to teach. I taught stuffed animals all my life growing up. I taught the neighborhood kids on Saturdays. And so I found a way to marry all of my passions and loves in a professional sense. And so I got a graduate teaching assistantship in world politics and American government. And therein cultivated my love of this country, of America, of this experiment that we have. And having broken away from the most powerful empire at the time on earth was the crown, the British Empire, and putting a stake in the ground and saying we are free and we choose to live as sovereign beings this side of the pond. And so I've just been absolutely fascinated with our system of government. So therein led to me getting a law degree and ultimately litigating constitutional law issues at the prosecutor's office. And so I litigated cases, Fourth Amendment search and seizure cases, Fifth Amendment right to remain silent cases, Sixth Amendment right to counsel. I mean, just fascinating. I had an opportunity to, on motion, argue on motion, not in person, in the U.S. Supreme Court in capital cases. And so I just absolutely love that, because it connects to our sovereignty as human beings, and the rights that we possess are unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and how that trickles down into our everyday lives.
Absolutely. It's an amazing story that this passion was able to become your life. Now, you had an amazing career. You argued before the Supreme Court of Ohio. Was that correct?
Yes, a number of times, at least 4 times. And as a prosecutor, the prosecutor's office gets very few rights to appeal, right? Because of double jeopardy. You can't get 2 bites at the apple. And the defendants, those that are criminally accused, really enjoy the rights. And it's our job to enforce those rights as a prosecutor. And so I was successful in getting 4 cases into the Ohio Supreme Court, arguing them and actually winning them all.
Wow.
So again, there's that gift of arguing and persuasion that my father.
That negotiation with mom and dad over everything turned into a great career. So you have this tremendous career going. You're teaching people, you're training the next level of people coming in. Then Thanksgiving comes along, and the day before you get a phone call. What happened?
So this was just last year. So the interesting year of 2020 for all of us around the globe, right? So I am feeling fatigued last year, and perhaps I'm thinking it's just the stress of what's all going on and how we've all had to keep pivoting. I have a consulting company now, and we were getting some new clients in as a result of the pandemic and the shutdowns. And so, you know how when you're not feeling well, you kind of make things up, right? Well, it's because of this, it's because of that. Or, my husband and I took up pickleball last year. I'm thinking I'm just like pulling muscles or something, because we were more accustomed to playing tennis. So I'm just making things up as to my declining health, not knowing just how severe my health, the declination of my health was becoming. And so Monday evening of the week of Thanksgiving, and I find it ironic and a blessing that it is Thanksgiving, because it has become such a gift to me, and hopefully to all those that hear my message. But I found a lump on the top of my rib. Not really, on the very top of my top rib. And I had such literally excruciating pain for a matter of months. And I got very concerned. It was about midnight. That following morning, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I called my primary care doctor, went in to get it checked. And he said, yeah, it's like you have seems like a lump in your breast. I'm thinking, oh, well, this can't be, I just had a mammogram a couple months earlier and complete blood work. I have been absolutely on top of my health for decades. And so the last thing I was thinking of was the ultimate diagnosis. And I said, by the way, I have some spine pain, some neck pain, some rib pain. So, okay, well, we'll send you for an x-ray. So went for a spinal x-ray and thoracic spine x-ray, and he sent me down to the main campus of the Cleveland Clinic later that day for a diagnostic mammogram. And I had lunch with a couple girlfriends already set up in Little Italy. And this is how unconcerned I was. I'm like, well, I'm not missing my lunch and my, glass of Pinot Noir with the girls. And so I said, make it later in the day, 3:30 or so. So I did. And the radiologist is doing the diagnostic mammogram, and she is very, very concerned. And she said that this is very, very troublesome. You need a biopsy on this as soon as possible tomorrow, which would be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So at that point, right, in my mind, it starts cascading into worry, like, oh, I had not planned on this, and this does not seem good. I know this isn't good. So a couple hours later, I get a phone call from a team of doctors at the Cleveland Clinic. And it's about 7:00. And one of my doctors, who's also a friend of mine, said, have you read your radiology report? I said, no. She said, well, it says that you have multiple myeloma, and it looks like you have breast cancer too. And you have at least 5 broken ribs. And I thought, so I said, let me get my husband on the phone, conference in my husband. Well, from that moment on, our lives drastically changed. Wednesday, I went for a diagnostic mammogram. Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, I get a call from the head of Chaucer Cancer Center and Logic Oncology, and said, we will help you. We will help you. That's, he was trying to be reassuring and said, we'll get you in as soon as possible. And the news came back that I had invasive lobular breast cancer, stage 4, spread to the bones.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And it was, so from that point on, it was about 3 weeks of testing where they thought I had multiple myeloma as well. I had to go in for bone biopsies and a PET scan. And at this point, my health had deteriorated so much that I was in pain, such pain, that I had to prop myself up on pillows. An oncoming sneeze was something to be feared, because when I would move, I would snap another rib.
Oh my God.
And I did not believe. The first couple of days, I said to my husband, who I married the love of my life a couple of years ago, and he's such an amazing man, said, I don't have the strength to fight this. I can't do this, EJ.
This is a pretty devastating prognosis that you received. You said, I don't know if I have the strength to go through this. So what goes through your mind at this point?
So I'm looking at my beloved husband and thinking, we're not even married 3 years, and thinking, I can't, I don't have the strength to fight this. I'm so sorry. I don't want to leave you. And I'm thinking to myself, so my parents, who are 90, are going to bury their, like, this is how it ends for Randy? Like that. So this is my life. So it's just done. And so that's going through my mind. And then on the other side, I'm thinking, I wonder how long I have to live. And what is that going to look like? Am I going to be scarred and marred? Am I going to be bald and skinny and a bag of bones? Am I going to die a slow, painful death? What does my life look like? And so seriously, this is at 59, this is how it ends. And so I do have the ability, and I've cultivated it more, to be a conscious observer of my life. And my father has taught me from a very young age to kind of stop, drop, and think, and not react. And so I was processing, I'm like, this is unusual. This is unbelievable. And I have such a circle of amazing friends, Frank, and healers here in Cleveland, and those that I've met over the course of my lifetime, and such good girlfriends from going back to high school and grade school, and my sorority sisters. And so I didn't want to blast the news all over, and I kept the circle tight of who I told. But one of the first people I told was one of the healers that worked on me and continues to work on me, is Stacy Newman. And she has sweet energies, and she is trained in Eden energy medicine. I contacted Stacy at the beginning of this cascading of information, and I said to Stacy, it looks really bad. I have cancer. I'm sure it's all over my body. She said, Randy, this is a messenger. Stay open, loving, and curious. And I thought, wow, what a gift to begin to frame it up this way. So Frank, after the first couple of days with that, where I was like, I don't have the strength to fight this, I went back to Stacy and said, let's start working on this. How can I frame this up where I can pitch my energy to say that this is a fascinating journey I'm going to be taking with the divine and with a small group of friends and a small group of healers to work through this and get to the other side. And
that's amazing. So what does your doctor say as you're starting this process and you're doing your own investigation? And how was your husband's mindset during this?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. EJ has, my husband has now, we met, I don't know now, 19, 20 years ago, only got together as a couple, maybe 5 years ago. And so he has seen me up close and personal. He knows how I think. He learns every day how I think and how I have tried to meld quantum physics, science, and the study of ancient philosophies, sprinkling of Western medicine, but really energy and frequency, that we are all energy and frequency, and our thoughts are so powerful. And we co-create with the divine because of the divinity within. So EJ knows that that's me. And so he has adopted more of that as well in his life. And he jumped right in and supported me in this way. And he said, however, when I was having a difficult time the first couple of days getting over into this, getting over into the mindset of, wow, this is this fascinating journey and let's have fun with this. He took my hands, his hands and held my face with his hands and just really said, this is your decision. If you don't want to be here, you're not going to be here. The doctors won't be able to do anything for you. You actually have the power to do that, Randi. And if you have the mindset where you want to leave, you're going to leave. I prefer you stay. And he ultimately said, quite frankly, I think I'm worth it.
Yeah.
And he is, and our marriage is. But you have to live for yourself first, right, Frank?
Exactly.
You can't do it for someone else, and he knew that, and he knows that. And so he remains very supportive. And I'll tell you, I don't think that I could have been as strong and steady and even as he was. He didn't deviate. And if he was devastated or frightened, he did not show it to me at all. The one time he broke down was when the doctor said I was stage 4. Of course, I knew that. I had done the research. Stage 4 means it had spread all over. And now, Frank, I thought that stage 4 was a gift where Dr. Abraham, and I thought his name is great, Dr. Abraham.
Right.
So Dr. Abraham said to us that there's nothing really we could do for you but palliative care. We're not going to do a mastectomy. There's no surgery. There's no chemo, no radiation. We're going to put you on palliative care only, estrogen inhibitors, and to see if we can manage the cancer for as long as possible. That was the standard of care. And I thought, oh, okay, good. I can work with this. This gives me an opportunity to go on that fascinating journey and play all these concepts that I have studied and learned, and I get to now practice them on myself.
Wow, that's incredible. Now tell me about this circle of friends. You said you kept this intentionally small.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want the typical thing. Oh, we're so sorry, and then nobody knows what to say. So how did that work with your circle of friends?
Well, so yes, I did keep it small. First, my heart was, I didn't want to worry people and make them sad for me. As I said, I have I'm so blessed with such a great circle of friends. And of course, I call them, different tiers, right? So we've got the inner circle, and then these tiers, and some friends that I don't have to talk to all the time, and that are just always in my heart, like my sorority sisters. And so I'm blessed with that, but I didn't want to like spread worry all over. And I also knew once I got over the initial shock of it, in a few days, I was going to be on the other side of it, and it wasn't going to take me that long. And I hope that doesn't sound arrogant. There was nothing arrogant about this. I just know how energy works. And there's another part of that where the hand wringers and the worrying is a low frequency, a low vibration. And I needed to insulate myself. My husband and I needed to insulate ourselves and stay in that high vibration of joy and fly above our circumstances, rise above our circumstances. And even if I would get the occasional text of this frequency of worry and sadness and grief, I would say, please, when you think of me only in joy, and send me joy. And because that's where I'm living, and that's how we're going to do this. And so I really wanted to be very careful. Only those that were kind of aligned with our mission and way of thinking, I wanted them to know.
Really, that's incredible. Now, energy healing, this is a part that just blew me away when we spoke. This is not new. This has been going on. There's stories of this before Christ.
Yes.
Yet,
Ancient.
yeah, yet we seem to have fallen away with maybe the Western medicine model. Okay. And now it seems that we're having this resurgence. Okay. From all your research, and you did a lot of research, why is this happening?
I believe that as a global community, we're waking up. We have been in a slumber from all of my research going back thousands of years. This is ancient, as you said, well before the time of Christ, that this Western medicine model, and especially driven by pharmaceutical companies, a pill to treat the symptom, not the underlying disease, is new. It is a blip, I guess, on in the course of history of how we have dealt with disease, how we have cured disease from an energetic perspective. And I see a sweeping around the globe of a positivity of frequency raising and, quite frankly, of ascension. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and I'm going to paraphrase it, it's the life of Joseph, of the coat of many colors Joseph in Genesis, where at the end of his time, after he was restored with his brothers in Israel and Egypt, and some viewers might know the story, or if you've seen the Broadway play, you know it.
You know what it is.
Right. And that, what Satan intends for evil, God intends for good. And, or what negative forces intend for evil, source energy intends for good, that there's nothing that can harm us ultimately, that there are lessons involved, staying open, loving, and curious. These are messengers to us from the divine for our good, for our growth, and for our ascension. And so what happened last year with this lockdown, which, that's a whole other show for a different time on the constitutionality of all of that, especially in this country. But the lockdown put us all in our homes. We got this time out to reassess our lives. And I have seen this kind of mass awakening to, aren't there different ways that we could do things? Going back from when I was young, Frank, right? I said I have this independence streak. I was well, what if and why? Well, why do we do that? Well, why do we have 40-hour weeks under fluorescent lights? Well, why do we do? Well, what we just assume these things, right? And so let's start to just question. Let's be curious. And I see so much more of that. Let's be curious. Maybe blasting someone with chemotherapy isn't the right approach. Maybe going in and lopping things off isn't going to take care of the cancer. And so I thought, well, what is the message for me? And so interesting, Frank, what Stacy Newman had said to me, one of my prime energy healers that has worked on me to process all of this, said, stay open, loving, and curious, name it, and ask what he or she wants from you. So I named the tumor Melissa, and I became friends with Melissa. And I said, Melissa, what are you trying to tell me? What's your message? I'm going to sit with you because we're not obviously going after you with great gusto in Western medicine. I am going to see what you have for me, and how can this enhance and benefit my life. So I did that, and through my YouTube channel, Life by Randi, and other friends that have referred to me, cancer patients, those diagnosed, I said, if you're honest as a cancer patient, you will know why you got this cancer. There is a message. You will know exactly why. And some are resistant because they think I'm trying to blame them, and I'm certainly not at all. There is not 1 ounce of blame here, but there's a message. And so I worked on the messages. So often people with breast cancer, women with breast cancer, are people pleasers. Honestly, a worthiness factor is involved. You're just quite not good enough. You have to keep proving to yourself, actually, your own worthiness. And so there's a book by Louise Hay called Heal Your Body, Heal Your Life. And she details a list of all the diseases and the energetic, emotional causes to all the diseases. And do you know, from broken bones to spine health to all of that, were all of those points that I personally had struggled with all of my life. And so I thought, now at this time, this is a gift for me that has showed up in my life to clean up all of that in my life. And really the trauma that's been stored in my body and in my cells. We store trauma. And we've all had trauma living on the 3D plane.
Yes, absolutely.
And so this is how I set it up. And interesting, you had asked earlier about how Dr. Abraham responded. He was so interested in how my mother moved through stage 3B ovarian cancer with a diagnosis of 6 months to live. And I said, well, it was her attitude. She didn't study quantum physics or, had energy healers. She just did it from her gut instinct. She's got one of the best intuitions and instincts I know. And that woman has never been wrong. And Dr. Abraham said, what your mom did, do that. And I said, well, I've studied quantum physics, Dr. Joe Dispenza, the book that changed my life, Breaking the Habit of Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One. I have been a student of this. And I told Dr. Abraham, and I think I put my finger up like that, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I said, I am going to deal with this. I am not going to be a cancer patient for the rest of my life. And with a smile on his face, he said, you keep doing that and keep me posted on your meditations, on your energy work. So at the Cleveland Clinic, he was very open to that. And so I'm grateful to him for that.
It's an incredible story that I'm seeing more and more MD doctors, now starting to look at this from with a different set of lenses, integrative medicine or energy healing or whatever term it is that they want to use. But they're saying more that one group that I'm involved with is saying stress and trauma have more to do with illness than some disease that's floating around in the world. And
yes,
I've read what your background and some of this. It seems that we're finally coming full circle. That therapeutic medicine for treatment and vaccines and curing diseases and what have you makes sense, but that's not the best way. It may not be the best way. And that's what think you're saying to us is you have
Right.
more control than you think. Is that correct?
Yes, and there are other ways if we could educate ourselves on, first of all, what is dis-ease? And Frank, what you just said, and I still do meditations. I would meditate during this time frame, about 4 hours a day. I'd get up at 4 in the morning. This was my job, happily so, and meditate till at least 8 o'clock in the morning, and on cellular health. And so I just did one this morning again, and it was about stress and what stress does to ourselves, within ourselves, at the atomic level, is the worst thing we could do. And we live in a fight or flight world. We live in a fight or flight world, from paying the mortgage to traffic on the roadway to, am I going to lose my job? Are taxes going to go up? How am I going to afford this? To trauma with children. Your child gets sick. I mean, we could go on and on and on. That's a low vibration. We understand what it's like living here. There's also trauma that you just mentioned, and you and I had spoken before about trauma. And I'm so heartened by the fact that even Western medicine and how we're treating, there's more seminars on trauma. There's more training on trauma, right? And there's the trauma-informed care, which trauma, that we store that in our bodies, and because we are energy and frequency, we have an electromagnetic field around us. We interact with the quantum field out beyond our electromagnetic field. And at any given time, right, we have the opportunity, I believe, and from the research I've done, and I haven't made this up, it's ancient, that to choose an optimal timeline for ourselves. And if we then, with the power of our thoughts, think about the outcome that we want, match it with an elevated emotion, say of joy, right? Happiness, a high frequency, sends it out into the quantum field. We now have a match for our intentions of that which we want to produce in our lives or within our bodies. With that elevated state of emotion, it has no other option but to bring it into your reality experience. This is how we manifest. This is how we take control of our lives minute by minute. And that even from a stage 4, there is no cure for this diagnosis, you can become cancer-free like I've become within 5 months, is what I did. Now, I'm not peddling a 5-month cure or anything. I'm just saying that's how it manifests.
That worked for you. Exactly. One of the things that is encouraging to me is people looking inwardly and saying, this isn't right. This isn't right for me. Simone Biles, great example. It's not right for me. I'm going to step back, right? I can imagine the pressure that she was under from the Olympic committees and all this other stuff. But this young woman had the courage, as you said, this isn't right. I'm in a low energy field. I need to step away and recalibrate where I'm going.
Yes, recalibrate. Absolutely. Because that, I love that word. And we can recalibrate at any given moment. And in the quantum field, in this area of science, it doesn't take long. We can change it with a thought. And it sticks, as I say. And I had this other healer that was commended to me a couple of days after the diagnosis, in November, actually, shortly thereafter, Mary Mazur, Mazur. And she's been on my show on Life by Randi. And she teaches Psych K workshops, Psych K for the key that unlocks your psyche. And it is born out of Dr. Bruce Lipton's teachings in Biology of Belief. Well, Mary helps you access your subconscious. So this is now even going deeper than the power of manifesting with your thoughts and reaching an elevated emotion. and bringing that into your reality experience. That Mary works with you. There are 13 belief points, I believe, and she does the muscle testing, and she went through that. And do you know, Frank, and I've lived in my body now for, almost 60 years. This was not a surprise to me. As joyful as I am and happy as I am, happy enough, there was always like a train, a force pulling on the other side of it. There was just resistance in my life. Things hadn't worked out there.
Let's continue
Okay.
with Mary with her 13 points.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I had this program that I didn't feel life was worth living. And I am certain it was the disappointments that were stored up, and other things. So trauma in the body. And so we worked through those, and I had so much joy in my life, in my thoughts. So obviously I can barely move. I'm propped up with pillows. I'm broken, pathologically broken ribs is very painful.
Yes.
I didn't know that until it happened to me. And then cancer in the bones, the spine, that it was so painful. And because of my organs starting to shut down, I couldn't take anything to help the pain. And so I had the power of my thoughts. So I thought, well, this is great because there's nothing else for me to do but use the power of my mind and emotions. And so my husband and I found the frequency of joy. We stayed there almost the entire time. And Frank, I rehearsed as much as I could the sheer elation, the state of joy I was going to be in when I got a clean PET scan. And my PET scan was scheduled for April 19th of this year, I'm sorry. And interesting, my father, who is still a devout Catholic, goes to mass online every day. He said a couple of days after my diagnosis, he had a dream, and Jesus came to him in the dream and said that I was going to be cancer-free in 5 months. And the doctors are not going to know how to explain it. And I'm going to be a Cleveland Clinic success story. And so my dad, I'm very close with my dad, and my mom too. But, they've both been very instrumental in my life in such positive ways. And my dad would call and say, April 1st, you know what month this is, Randy? This is the month you're going to get a cancer-free diagnosis. And so April 19th, Frank, was my PET scan. And that evening, they released the results to my chart, completely cancer-free. The breast tumor is gone. The spine is clear. The ribs, while they're still pathologically broken, they last week, July 21st, and it is also cancer. I'm still cancer-free.
That's incredible. This is just an amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. So, Randy, what are you doing now? You've gotten 2 clean PET scans. You've got a consulting thing going. What's your world like now?
Well, my world is, I feel so privileged to have gone through this, to still be going through this. I will be getting PET scans. I take a lot of supplements, and I still have, all my energy, I still work on energy, and I am flying high, Frank, in life. That this is, I call it Randy 3.0. And that I have a website, lifebyrandy.com, and a YouTube channel, just to share my story, to share those that have worked on me. I don't want any, remuneration for it. And I just want to share the alternative ways that one can heal. And if it suits you, my job is not to convince. That's the lawyer in me, is to convince. This is not to convince. This is to share, and whoever resonates with it resonates with it. Certainly, I would love to be involved in, wellness centers or other opportunities to bring this more into the practical and make it more readily available. But my life is still with a consulting company with my husband, and just joy in the journey. And life is sweeter every minute of every day.
This is incredible. The high vibration, high energy ability. This is incredible. But we're basically almost out of time here, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Randi so much for sharing this story. This is really not only inspirational and educational, but the power of energy healing and energy psychology is real. This is real stuff.
Yeah.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what life throws at you, and you can't get much more life throws at you than what Randi's been through, please do 3 things. Look up, get up, never ever give up. And better times and better people like Randi will come into your life. If you want more information about Randi, all of her pages she just mentioned, or you can contact me and I'll make sure that it gets to her. You can see this interview and this story on ROKU TV or on my YouTube channel, Frank Zaccari. If you go to the YouTube, please subscribe. Now, let me leave you with this. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Randi showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We look into another life-altering event. Randi, one more time, thank you so much.
My privilege. Thank you, Frank.